Howdy and welcome to Bamberger Ranch. My name is Aldo Leopold. I'm the director of the Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute, and we're going to continue our Leopold Live series here at Bamberger, continuing to talk about the 5 basic tools introduced by Aldo Leopold, the father of wildlife management. These 5 tools include cow, axe, plow, fire, and gun. And what we hope to do in the upcoming months is show you how those tools can be applied, but with very specific projects and objectives. And so with me is Dr. April Sansom. She's the executive director of Bamberger, and she's going to tell us a little bit about Bamberger and what we hope to cover in the series.
Great. Thank you so much, Roel. We're really excited to have you and your colleagues from the Natural Resources Institute back here at Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. And we're excited about continuing our journey into Leopold Live version 2. Like Roel said, we'll be providing more detail and more useful information regarding the 5 tools that Aldo Leopold championed. Here at Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is landowner stewardship, outreach, and environmental education. So we have many Central Texas school children that come visit us every year for hands-on science-based environmental education lessons, and we also lead showcase tours and workshops for landowners interested in practicing restoration and good land stewardship. So we're very happy to be partnering with Natural Resources Institute, and we know that you'll benefit a lot from the information that we are going to be talking about during this new version of Leopold Live.
So let's go ahead and get started.
Great.
My name is Kayla Krueger. I'm one of the newest staff members here at the ranch. I'm about to hit my 1-year anniversary, so that's pretty exciting. I am the education and programs manager here at the ranch. So we're going to be talking today a little bit about that mission of sustaining stewardship and how the ranch tackles that. To go back in the past, though, to start off there, to where Mr. Bamberger came up with this idea and how it all evolved. As some of you may know, back in 1969, Mr. Bamberger had the opportunity to purchase the first 3,000 acres of this ranch, and his sole mission was to find the worst piece of property that he could. And so he definitely found that in the 3,000 acres that he purchased, covered in cedar thicket, began that journey of restoration, removing the cedar trees, removing that monoculture, and reintroducing the native grassland. And then, as I'm sure many of you watching know, the miracle that happened and that he, in that mission of restoring the native habitat, also brought water back to the ranch. So it's a really beautiful story. Something you may not know about that tale, though, is the scrutiny that he went under in those early years of restoration. We were fortunate enough recently to meet a gentleman who was working for the Fredericksburg Gazette back in 1969, and he moved away and kind of just forgot about that experience, and was back in town for a public tour and shared with us, the light went on in his head, oh, this is that guy that we heard about in '69 who was doing crazy things on that hill over there in Johnson City. So just how bizarre it was in 1969 for this millionaire to purchase land and then pump money into it, not really expecting much of a return. And he was doing some things that were just unheard of back then. But it paid off. So scrutiny led to praise and led to this beautiful preserve that we all get to work on today. So the evolution of education within there. He did start off with this mission of restoration and just that altruistic, I want to do good for my environment. And then people caught on and they wanted to explore and research and see what he was doing. So he already had a lot of relationships with people in that world of ecology and environmental resources. So he started inviting them to the ranch. They would ask to come to the ranch. The Sierra Club was a really big part of that. They would spend time out here, and he just loved sharing this place with people. And it honestly got to a point where if he got a phone call, he would immediately go and do a tour. And it was every day, phone call, okay, let's go, I'll show you the place. Okay, I'll go show you the place. And it wasn't until the wonderful Margaret Bamberger came into his life that we got a little bit of order to that. She, as any wonderful spouse would do, thought, okay, you're spending a little bit too much time just running around and entertaining people. I need you to be a little more organized with this. So Margaret is the one who really added, we give her credit anyway, for adding the structure to our education programs at the ranch today. She was the first one to really think about a public tour structure, which we still run today. I think the quote that Mr. Bamberger gave me the other day was, Margaret kind of scolded him and said, you gotta stop doing that. You can't answer every phone call and go off and entertain them. You can't do that. Why don't you hook up on those trailers, charge $5, and we'll do it once a month. We'll take people around the ranch. Which Bamberger, even though he was getting all these calls all the time for people wanting to see the ranch, thought that that wouldn't work. He was like, who's gonna wanna come see it? We're not gonna make any money. And they did. It wasn't that hard to garner the resources there. So now that we're on Margaret, Margaret was instrumental truly in the programs that we run today. Margaret was a volunteer, a master naturalist. She, like Mr. Bamberger, had that heart for nature and ecology and keeping this around. So she started the public tours. She was instrumental in setting up workshops, so landowner workshops. So the workshops in the beginning, Mr. Bamberger, through the restoration and consulting people, had 4 really key figures on his staff that covered the areas of the ranch. So they were the deer Aggie, the cow Aggie, the tree Aggie, and then a gentleman who we lovingly refer to as the damn Aggie. He wasn't truly an Aggie. He actually was just a local boy who was really good at what he did, Leroy Petrie. Anyway, so that was his crew of people. And so they started to invite landowners out then for his team of experts, if you will, that trial and error expert that they were, to teach other people about it and really spread that gospel of good land management. And the really big thing that Margaret did was she brought kids out here. So Margaret worked with Susan Sanders from, at the time she was with Riverside Nature Center there in Kerrville, and Mary Kay Saxton. And they reached out to schools to bring children to the ranch and just expose them to this. That was one thing they were really seeing back then in the early 90s especially, and we're still seeing it today, like this problem has not gone away. The loss of rural communities and rural schools and the increase in that urbanization in urban communities. So they thought one way to tackle that was just to reach out to them and get kids to the ranch, even if it's for a day. That would be really powerful. Talking to Mr. Bamberger the other day, he really did say his dream was to reach every kid and have school structured to be more nature-centric, which is something interesting we're seeing in today's world as well. All right, let me welcome to joining the conversation is April Sansom, our executive director here at the ranch, who you've met before if you've been watching the Leopold live videos, which you should be if you're not. Anyway, so our current problems, our current struggles with that idea of stewardship in today's world is definitely the land fragmentation issue that we're seeing all over the state. And so losing these large tracts of land, breaking them apart, and then with private lands rights here in Texas, how anybody can take that now and do anything to it. The need for stewardship is ever growing.
Absolutely. It's really true, Kayla. That's very true. And I really enjoyed hearing you talk about the evolution of the education program here at Bamberger Ranch Preserve. And how do you shared with me a thought a little while ago that I thought was really important. And so talk a little bit about how you feel like the education program ties in to that large threat that we face here in Texas in terms of the breakup of large family lands.
Great, yeah. So a little bit of backstory on me. First off, I got into the world of education within natural resources because I saw that need, right? I was doing a research project in the community. I was researching the degradation of their land, but we weren't doing anything to tell the people. It was like, I'm by your house studying the loss of this tree, but we're not telling you about the loss of this tree. So like that connection. So it's really where I see that role today. I think it's wonderful that more people are having access to purchase land. So fragmentation is often presented as this horrible thing happening in Texas because it is sad to see these large properties being broken up, but it also is giving people the opportunity to have their own land, which is such a dream. So then the role there, the mission there, is to then educate them. These are brand new landowners and they are not intentionally wanting to be ill. So our job then is to to instill that love and that understanding of how to be good, how to be connected to your land.
Absolutely.
And not be away from it, yeah.
Absolutely. Recently, we've had a couple of groups that have visited us here at Bamberger Ranch Preserve that are participating in a cooperative style of management or an association that manages wildlife across landscapes. Could you talk about that, how that works a little bit?
So these landowner co-ops or management groups really do kind of come together with the same mission. So they all have tracts of land that they share a fence line typically, and so they get together and meet and talk about their management goals and work together. And it's really beautiful to see. So the other day we were supposed to have 10 landowners up. I think we got 7, all coming together. There's a camaraderie there. They still are able to fulfill their own management goals on their land, but they have an overarching purpose to how they do it. So I mean, that would be beautiful to see across the board in our landscape.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would be really, really neat to see more of that, wouldn't it? Absolutely.
And we are seeing some of it. Like we shot a video for Leopold Live about just different structures of that. So the ranch style structure where people, like, what was that called? I don't remember what the structure's called, but like brushy top subdivision. It's a ranch that's managed, and then each person owns their little lot within that ranch.
Right. It's like a small acreage management across a larger, what was at one point a larger ranch. Right. You told me something really wonderful, Kayla, that Mr. Bamberger mentioned to you a week ago.
Yes.
A week ago today. You told me something that he said that you and I both agreed was a pretty neat thing to say. Can you talk a little bit about what he said to you?
So it's tricky not to get too preachy with what we do, right? Like, this is the way to do it. Cut down all your cedar trees. No. Like, we don't want that. So Mr. Bamberger, in conversation with me, stopped me to make sure that I understood, like, we are not trying to dictate how anybody manages their land or say this is the right way to do it. It really is, we just want to hopefully spark something in your heart to be conscious of it and then fulfill whatever goals you have, whatever that looks like. As long as you're not like tearing it down, we're happy with what you're doing.
Right. And so he made the specific point that different landowners can have different goals, and as long as they're doing it thoughtfully and without just scorched earth campaign, they may approach those goals in a way that works for them, but also works in terms of conservation or and land stewardship.
So never scrutinize, always just encourage. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. And so we've talked about how our leadership in private land stewardship can really help other people, and that's a very important part of our educational role. But let's go back to the little ones, the young kids, which it's always fun to have children out here, and it's always fun to see you in front of them, helping them learn, helping them understand the value of protecting nature. So talk a little bit more about how important you feel that is to start with them when they're in the younger grades.
So important. Again, because of the trend we're seeing now for just more urbanization, a lot of kids that we encounter, we get them in fifth grade, third grade is kind of our age group. They may not have even been outside. And it habitat like this, like they go to their park. San Antonio is one of the places we really work with, and they have some great parks in San Antonio, but nothing this wild, quote unquote. So just they're scared a lot of times. Like that is one hurdle that we have to overcome. First off, is they come out here and they think danger and they think all these really terrible things that are associated with that word wild, even the parents. So I do a lot of convincing of the parents to let their kids come out here for the overnight trips, especially to say it is safe, it is immersive. But as soon as we show them, as soon as they step foot and they just feel that first, like in the first 10 minutes, right? They get off the bus, they're a little bit crazy, they're asking a lot of questions. And as soon as you start talking and they get a minute to stop, the Selah moment right away, they get a minute to stop and just feel how it feels out here, we've got them hooked, right? And that's the goal. I just want to like put that little seed in everybody's heart. Like this is around you, this is important. And And again, back to that word connection. You are connected to this. Even if you live in an apartment in San Antonio or in an urban environment, you are still a part of this. It is still in your backyard. It may not look like this, but you are here. You're here. So in sparking it in the kids, and then they take it home to the parents, and then they talk about it with the parents, and they just talk on and on and on. We've met kids who were at the ranch years ago and they still talk about it.
That's right.
Amazing.
Yeah, they come back as college students or as career professionals, and they still talk about being here, seeing the rain machine.
Seeing the rain machine.
Yeah.
And I was told years ago, at a Wiley Society camp, actually, like, we don't know where all of you are going to go. Like, the statistics say that most of you probably won't even go into a natural resource, but you're here today. So if you're going to be a lawyer one day in the world, we just want you to have that natural heart to say, I'm always consciously making choices with this as my underlying principle.
I like that very much. I like that very much, because not everybody has to be a biologist, but everybody should have the natural world in their hearts and minds.
And it's powerful, it's healing, it's important.
That's absolutely true, and I think that's a wonderful opportunity to kind of bring it back to what you were talking about earlier with Margaret Bamberger and Mary Kay and Susan, and how for them, when they were getting started, it was about science, but it was also about that element of discovery, right?
Yes.
And you've done a lot of that with kids, that element of appreciation and discovery.
Yeah, just getting their hands on stuff. And so in the early years, Margaret was the one who started our camps out here, and they just called them nature camps. And the story that got passed on to me was there was no structure to them. It really was just Margaret letting the kids explore and seeing what they got into that day. And I love that. Like, if we could do that today and just let a kid go out and collect a snake and let their curiosity take them, it's kind of beautiful.
Absolutely.
Power,
Absolutely. Because it does just what you just described, where they're awestruck and they're so impressed, and then they really get an experience where they can understand how wonderful it is to be out in a place like this.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what we do today?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. So today, as we said, we have way more structure to our programming. The biggest ones, let's start with just public tours. So at least once a month, we invite people to the ranch just to come see it and experience it, ask their questions. And we get a lot of, where are most of the people from? Do you have a stat on that?
That's a great question. We get people from all over. Many of them are landowners in the 17 county hill country region, but we get folks that come down from the Panhandle. We get folks that come from East Texas. I would say the majority are from the hill country.
Okay.
Every once in a while, we'll get someone from overseas.
Yes. Yeah.
Last year, we had a gentleman who was in town from Australia and knew about us and came. And when he was in the States, he made specific plans to visit Bamberger Ranch Preserve.
Or here's I'm totally taking a tangent story here. So Jane Goodall came to the ranch, right?
Yes.
And so we have an English connection there.
Yes.
Was it Mr. Bamberger and Joanna? They were in London, and their taxi driver had been to the ranch, or he just heard of it?
That is one of the most wonderful stories that we have around here, and Mr. B loves to tell it, and you're absolutely right. So Joanna, so let's go back to Jane Goodall.
Oh, yes, sorry.
She did come here in the early 90s, and she was visiting San Antonio with the Explorers Club, and Mr. Bamberger had some friends in the Explorers Club, and one of them called him and said, David, I've got Jane Goodall here in San Antonio, and she cannot stand being in the city. Can I please bring her out to your ranch? And of course, David said, well, of course, bring her out. And Margaret was still alive at the time. And Margaret and Jane Goodall became very good friends, and remained good friends until Margaret passed away in 2009. So that's a pretty neat, a neat thing to think about in terms of this place's wonderful history.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, Joanna Bamberger is originally from England. Yes. And so years ago, David and Joanna went to visit her family back home in England. And they leave Heathrow, and they're in the taxi, And they're driving along, and the taxi driver asks them where they're from. And they said, well, we're from Texas. And the taxi driver said, you're from Texas? Do you know J. David Bamberger?
Okay, that's the story. Yeah. It's a little bit boasty, like, I love him so much.
You can imagine the giggles that ensued from David and Joanna when that happened.
That's so cool.
And so we're really fortunate that our reputation as a leader in private land stewardship does reach across oceans.
Yes.
And we're very proud of that.
Yeah. And a lot of that, like, again, goes back to David and Margaret. Like, I just get to pick up in the middle of the stream and continue that mission, but they did so much to make this possible for us. You know?
Exactly, Kayla. They really did. They really set the stage. And started what continues to be a remarkable project. And that we, all of us, have the wonderful responsibility and task of carrying it forward into the future so that it's here in perpetuity for forever, so that people can continue to come and learn.
And part of it. So back to our program. So we often call the tour as our Stewardship 101.
That's right.
Just getting people sparking that in them. And then we offer the workshops still. So they were started, I guess, in the early 90s. I shouldn't say a date on it unless I absolutely know the date, but we started it early
sometime around the early 90s, I think is about right.
Okay. So annually we offer 4 land stewardship workshops, tree and shrub, which we just had, and grasses, for landowners to come out and learn, again, from our trial and error. This is what it looks like after 50 years of active work and management and those big efforts in the beginning. A little bit of education of identification, which is really important when you're doing any mission. And just giving them access. Like, we are seeing that trend more and more to people owning smaller plots, or it's a family plot that they're trying to save. And so they just want to come and learn something, which is amazing. Come and just get a little bit of knowledge just to save that one tree in your yard or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right, because it's often said, and it's worth repeating, that the biggest terrestrial threat to conservation in Texas today is the fragmentation of those large family lands. So just as you said, you know, whether the landowners are stewarding 50,000 acres, 5,000 acres, or 1/5 of an acre, everyone can have a role in managing the natural resources that we all depend on, and everyone can have their own small part in that.
Yeah. Which is a beautiful trend, at least I feel like we're recognizing. So not only that, it's like, so younger couples or whoever it is purchasing small plots that they want to do something good with. We've had a lot recently of developers coming to us, developers that want to follow that model of under a wildlife umbrella, but each person gets their own lot within that.
Exactly.
It's been really refreshing to, like, okay, like, this is a positive outlook on where we're headed.
I agree.
Yeah.
I find it encouraging that we've had developers that come in and say, yes, we are interested in creating housing for people, but we're very interested in creating it in a way that particularly pays attention to stewardship and conservation measures.
That's nice. So that's the big guys, and then the little guys. Did I get everybody in the big guy? Public tours, workshops. Okay, and then the kids. Again, my my favorite area. So we do day field trips with 3rd graders, just getting them out here for a little bit. A mad dash of nature hike and exploring the ranch, looking at the fossils, and just opening eyes and making it exciting to be out here. And then the big one, which we have coming up tomorrow, is what we call our 3-2. So a school will come out here, usually a really intimate, like, classroom setting, so 25 kids as opposed to the 75 that we'll get on the day field trips. And they come, they spend the night at the ranch, and it's fully immersive, an immersive science experience and nature experience.
It's really wonderful, isn't it?
I love it so much. And the key there, like, because there's a little bit of a sale when you're working with schools, because they have a lot going on.
Right.
So what makes it awesome, for lack of a better word, a more descriptive word, is 5th grade is where they do their first science STAR testing, state testing. And it's also a lot of nature and natural resource based. So like we can sell it to them because it actually ties into their curriculum really well. And they've actually seen progress with that. A lot of the schools that have a history of coming out here see growth in that particular area.
Isn't that also wonderful?
Which like, yeah, that makes me happy. So not only is it like just good for the kids to be out here, it like is good for the school in a way because it shows their increase. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yes.
And then in the summertime we do a camp, so we'll do two weeks of Selah camp, which I haven't been able to do yet, but
you will.
I will.
And it's going to be fun.
I'm going to collect a lot of snakes, I feel. It's going to be in my nature. But it'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a nature themed camp, right? Yes, so it's a camp specifically focused on kids who know that they're going to have a lot of fun, but they're also going to be having nature lessons as well. Yeah.
And a little leadership in there too. Like something we really try to encourage with any kid that you work with is that independence, which I think I've always thought this way anyway, that nature really allows that. Like it's a safe place for a kid to play and explore without hurting themselves, right? So they gain that independence, they gain that leadership, and it's a really great place to foster that on all levels.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that that's one really, really important element of our educational programming as well, is that youth development and leadership attention. Because I completely agree with you, Kayla, that outdoors and in the natural world is a really, really wonderful space to develop that.
Yeah, it's safe. Okay, so that's where we are today. I asked Mr. Bamberger this question on Monday, and so I'm curious what you would say to it. Where do you see our role in the future being, or what do you see the future looking like in 100 years? Is kind of what I asked him.
Wow, that's a neat question. I'm glad you asked him that, and I'm glad you asked me that too, because in 100 years, our critical role as open space in Blanco County is going to be even more important in 100 years than it is now. Because we know that the growth in the hill country is not slowing down. And we know that the fact that we are here as a green gem in the middle of Blanco County is so important now and is going to be 100 times more important in 100 years.
Right, yeah.
And so I really see us, our leadership in land stewardship also having grown exponentially by 100 times.
Good, okay.
I hope that the lessons that we teach to adults are less needed in 100 years. Because I hope that by that time we have learned that any development that we do, any house that we build, we have to have nature in mind, and we have to have broader concepts of land stewardship in mind. And I mean we as a species. And so hopefully the lessons that we teach to adults have become a little more obsolete because everybody's doing them.
I would agree with that,
I think that in terms of children, that's always an opportunity because as long as there's children, they are always going to be our future.
Yes, for sure. Okay, we have that cool graphic. A cartoonist friend of Mr. Bamberger drew it, which I think I have in the room, but it has the ranch surrounded by that Ostetonia, what did that student say? Metroplex, like
that's
a McDonald's right on the border of it.
Yes.
Again, I hope that's not what it actually looks like in the future, that it's so encroached that the ranch is a central park to this greater thing. But we never know, right? It's a crazy
I agree. I hope that stark sort of boundary line where, here we are, our wonderful open space. And yeah, the visual is very stark, isn't it? It's all surrounded on the border, the perimeter fences by skyscrapers and fast food restaurants. I hope that doesn't ever really happen. But metaphorically, it's going to happen somewhat.
Yes.
As Austin and San Antonio grow towards us.
Oh yeah.
And again, it just makes what we do all the more important every single year, every single day.
Yeah. Hitting it all fronts.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, is there anything else you want to discuss? Thank you for sitting with me and talking with me.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sitting and talking with me, and thank you for what you do to really take leadership over the education programs. I truly believe that they're very important, and I thank you for really taking leadership and making sure that they are impactful with those children.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I do love it. And support. You've been really great. Thank you.